Hello, back again. Going to give you a little bit of a lecture on depreciation here. We started on Saturday with our lecture. Your test, this is actually Thursday. Your test Saturday, 35 questions, 2.5 hours to take that, and then I'd like for you to watch this video. I'm going to give you a homework problem to do that will go over part of it here in this lecture. But what I'd like for you to have with you is your course outline dealing with Chapter 10, which looks like this, the depreciation and amortization pages. Okay, I'd like for you to have that. I'd also like for you to have this depreciation packet. Okay, D1 gives you all the depreciation rates. And also the auto enlisted property packet that I gave you. Okay, you'll need to have those three things with you. And I'm going to switch this off away from my ugly face so that you can look at the Chapter 10. We'll start with Chapter 10, and this webcam will get you right to Chapter 10, and I'll get you there now. Switching over to off of webcam and onto Chapter 10. Okay, so you should be here. You should all have this. You can see that we talked about all of these items in depreciation pre-1981, post-1980, and pre-1987 ACRS, which mostly is done. This, believe it or not, there's still some of it, but that's all done. And after 1986, we call it maker's depreciation. Okay. Depreciation is only taken on property used in a trade or business. The personal use of assets, not depreciable. You cannot take depreciation on land. So very often when you buy a piece of, let's say, rental property for $150,000, well, that includes the land that it sits on. You cannot take all of it. You can only take the building portion of it. So generally, we have an allowance for land. So if you buy that $150,000 parcel of land, perhaps $30,000 represents land and the rest of it is depreciable in the form of a building. The government usually, unwritten rule, but between 10, 15, sometimes as much as 20% of the value of a piece of property, if it's not specifically allocated, is land. Okay. You have to determine when the asset is quote-unquote placed in service. That's a big key item there. You can buy a piece of property or buy a machine, let's say, on December 30th, but if you don't put it in service until mid-January, then you don't get to depreciate it in December. You have to depreciate it in January. Okay. There is tangible versus intangible property. You don't depreciate the purchase, for instance, of someone's accounts receivable. It has to be tangible property. We have to differentiate between real property, real estate, building and its structural components, versus personal property. Personal property are things that you can move about, such as desks, furniture, computers, and so forth. Business versus personal use property. You can only depreciate business property and not personal use property. And then again, capitalization versus expense. If you are spending money to keep an asset in its current operating condition, then that is an expense and not subject to depreciation, where you have to capitalize it and depreciate it. Okay. The conversion from personal use to business use, you have to use either the lesser of the adjusted basis or fair market value at the date of conversion. So for instance, my brother was into motorcycle riding and he used a bunch of my father's equipment to do his motorcycle racing, and he thought he could just appreciate the fair value of those machines. Well, that's not how it works. You basically take the cost of those pieces of equipment, or the adjusted basis, or the fair market value at the date that he converted it from personal use to business use. So it was a very low value. Okay. In maker's depreciation,